Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. We are on our journey through Final Fantasy IX. This is part 3 of Final Fantasy IX Lives. And I am joined, as always, by my co-hosts, Billy, what are you doing with yourself, Rothert?
That's a good question. The answer to it almost all the time is grinding for more. I'm just forever in pursuit of the next level, the next ability, the next Tetramaster card that I'm going to get from that NPC.
I love that you are already preemptively defending yourself. I'm also joined by Peter, responsible adult Busby.
What's going on? I try to grind as little as possible because, as Gino said, I'm an adult who makes reasonable life decisions. But somehow I still managed to progress through Final Fantasy IX. It's almost as if grinding isn't that necessary.
And I am also joined by my compatriot in this Final Fantasy Death March, Chris ZombiePie Redacted. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead, another nickname for this podcast, not the craziest person on this podcast anymore. You had that mantle for a while, but not no more.
Wait, I'm not the craziest anymore?
No, not anymore.
It's because I came back.
Not related to Final Fantasy, because everything else apparently.
Yeah, you're
last week I have been informed that I am the craziest person ever.
Yeah, you are, and you don't have to tell any of those stories on this show. This is a safe show. You don't have to. We're not going to make you do that. But So before we discuss the game, there's a little factoid. So the reason why Billy has that nickname and why Pete's a responsible adult and why ZP is not the craziest. So ZombiePie, you've been playing Final Fantasy IX. You told me that you were going to try to replay part of Disc 3 because you didn't
I wanted to get all the coffee.
You didn't get enough coffee. Mr. Morid, he needed coffee, and you missed the point of no return, and so you doubled back to get him coffee. You doubled back from how far?
I replayed the entirety of Disc 3.
Okay, you replayed the entirety of Disc 3. That would take a
while. Not a short disc.
And I did it over the course of a Saturday and a Sunday. 2 days. Maybe 1.5. If we're being generous, I dedicated 1.5 days of my life to this.
Hopefully you used the fast forward feature?
I did not, and I also did not disable random encounters because unlike the three of you, I believe in playing this game as God intended. So no easy lemon squeezy situations for me.
God had no hand in this game.
God had plenty of. They pray in this game, so there is a God.
There may be multiple in this game. Well,
God intended that you play this game and have plenty of random encounters, and I will have the plentiest of random encounters in this game.
I told you not to do that. I explicitly told you not to do that, but
you did.
You know, even with you doing that, even with you taking that
we should also mention the worst part is I also ended up not getting all of the coffees, so replaying Disc 3 was all for naught.
When I replay a game, it's because I missed like a Trinity in Kingdom Hearts 2, but I got it and 100%ed that game. I restarted probably 15, 20 hours of a video game, so I missed a Trinity.
Okay, so going off of that, ZombiePie, you spent, according to Steam, you've spent 43 hours playing this game.
I have. We should generally say that I normally take longer than you to play these Final Fantasy games because these are... I have never, until we did these podcasts, I have never really played a lot of JRPGs. I don't play Kingdom Hearts. You know what? Final Fantasy VIII, for the purposes of this podcast, was the very first Square Enix game I had ever played.
Yes. So this makes sense. You're a little bit slower. Now, 43 hours, if you're replaying an entire disc, you know, this game's about 40 hours long. That makes total sense. It makes total sense. Billy, how many hours do you think you've spent playing this game? Because you haven't finished Disc 3 yet. The first time.
He probably doesn't have to guess.
I mean, I'm trying to make it as accurate as possible because Gino threw a ballpark out before, but I'm going to throw out like...
Get it down in a minute.
55 hours?
According to Steam, 47 hours. You've spent... ZombiePie doubled back For an entire fucking disc. Like
an entire disc.
The longest disc in the game. The longest one.
It is a long disc.
He has spent 4 fewer hours than you. How?
I also never played any of the side quests.
Is that a real? Do you want me to actually answer that question? Because I can answer that question.
No, I want you have 5 words to say why. They don't
Whatever
have to be a complete sentence.
It's going to involve drop charts. And no
5 words. Okay, 5 words.
5 words.
5
I'm
words
counting.
that express why this game took.
Why did this happen?
First one, steal.
Okay.
Bro, Gino and I have been stealing all of the stuff from the bosses, and we have not.
Let him go.
He's got okay, fine.
Maybe
one more.
Steal.
4.
Eat.
Okay.
Let's see, we're gonna do.
It's a great haiku we're starting.
Chocographs.
Synthesize.
Okay.
Menus. And
get a nice verb string.
Does it start with a tetra and end with an
I'm just gonna say grind, because I'm gonna try to encompass with grind like all exp and abilities. Because I have this weird tick where I have to have all my characters the same level. And
so mistakes are made.
As soon as I had the ability to swap out characters, I had to balance out what their levels were because I got them at different times.
God. Well, okay. So thank you for joining us for the show. We're going to be talking about the 3rd disc of Final Fantasy IX now that we got that bookkeeping out of the way.
Bookkeeping.
Yep, that just
we're nothing about Terra on D+.
On the record, part of the reason why it has taken me, I think, a little bit longer to play, also because I missed last week or the last time we did an FF9 installment. I had this weird problem with my computer where I would just blue screen of death over and over and over again, and I had to take like weeks off of Final Fantasy IX. So I think some of my
was your counter running while you took those weeks off?
No.
Oh, well, in that case.
But I did lose some progress because I would have, like my computer would just blue screen on me sometimes.
Let's blame the game, not the player.
I fixed the problem now, but I probably lost a good 10 days to 2 weeks of eligible playtime. So I've been on catch-up mode the whole time.
I beat this game in 6 hours.
You played this game more than I have.
Yes, I'm just throwing that out there. Which means that thing you
are
threw
aware
out,
of what you should and should not do in this game. You can trim the fat.
That means that thing you threw out when we were off mic is
I'm just going to sit in the background while you guys yell at each other.
But,
there's no lean in this game.
I'm going to eat my sandwich now.
Okay, so if you want to get in touch with the show, at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com, we have comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And without further ado, let's start off our discussion of Disc 3 by going over some of the predictions that ZombiePie made. Nostradamus over there.
I think I was better than Nostradamus because at least half of them were correct.
Yeah, you got most of it. You got a couple of good.
Okay, so we got 2 big ones. One of my first predictions was that Zidane and Kuja were brothers, and they're technically brothers. Technically, they came from the same test tube.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was that Steiner and Beatrice would hook up, which I said sarcastically, hoping that I would be wrong, but I was not wrong. That happened. That was the thing.
And then you were wrong about Vivi dying.
Vivi dying, I predicted that there would be a dark middle chapter, and there kind of was a dark middle chapter,
but
it didn't quite go for the gravitas of 7.
I would say that Disc 2 is more the dark middle chapter than Disc 3 is kind of a rising action for most part.
Okay, yeah, I can see that, but they're trying to deal with their shit and come together, coalesce towards their unifying goal, getting out of the whale of the beast, as we would say. I was also wrong about
what was that? Not the whale of the beast.
Belly of the beast.
Belly of the whale, perhaps.
Hey, yeah, sure.
I know where you're going with the back you up, bro.
What else was I wrong about? I think I predicted that there would be more people dying, and I was wrong about that. There's a distinct lack of of murder and death
The
of
black
important
mages died,
characters.
but are they really people?
Yes.
We had this discussion last time. I think we agreed that
They're people, but they're not humans.
they're not humans.
Okay.
Even though I looked it up, and I guess I wanted to ask Gino, how are black mages depicted in previous entries of Final Fantasy? Because I was just under the impression that black mages were humans that had like this weird black aura over them, and their eyes just suddenly became these yellow beads.
So it's never really clear. In the earlier games, it's just basically a person with a pointy hat with that kind of design that Vivi has, but it's not implied that they are not humans. It just looks like they're a human with big robes and a big hat. This 9 kind of comes up with its own canon for what the black mages are. That's not the case with all the other games.
Is it applied throughout following 9?
No, because black mages
in like 12.
Black mages are kind of a job going forward from 9. Like 9 is the only one where black mage is a race. Everyone else, every other game, it's
basically
class.
a class. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But
like black belt.
But 9 is one of the games where all of the classes also kind of explicitly become races as well. Like Freya being a dragoon, like the rat people are the only people who are dragoons.
Yeah.
Quina is a blue mage, and the Qs are the only people who are blue mages, which I think is an interesting way to do it.
Oh yes, Quina.
So, without further ado, let us go on our journey through Disc 3. We start off after Garnet's mother passes away. She assumes the throne. And there's a long sequence where she is just kind of ruling, and Zidane
long sequence.
She's kind of mopey.
That goes on for too long because it goes nowhere. One of my immediate problems with Disc 3 is how the story stops. And it stays dead for, I don't know, maybe a solid hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah, of almost nothing but cutscenes.
Nothing.
Where Zidane is kind of moping because his love interest is now the queen, and he feels like she's out of reach. And all of the other characters are kind of just getting their shit together after this kind of globe-spanning war that they were involved in. You see Freya comes back. The party kind of reunites in Alexandria.
Freya's the only character who is actually trying to do research and trying to relocate Kuja, understand Kuja's motivations. And I think that's what the story during this period of time should have been, trying to have a context to Kuja's actions. To the game's defense, they end up developing the context to his actions, but it's such a waste. Our time in Treno and Alexandria feels like such a waste because it's just comical set piece after comical set piece. When the previous scene, if we recognize it, was mourning the death of Queen Brawny. It is a real bitter pill to swallow, at least in my opinion, to go from such two disparate emotional settings and tones. And the game really doesn't make you feel motivated to keep going. I found the first 2 hours of Disc 3 to just be a bore and difficult to stomach through.
Yeah, and this is a game, so a lot of games do not necessarily give the plot time to breathe. Like, there is no downtime, there's no time for downtime. And while I don't think that it is the most engaging part of the game, I think it's probably the worst part of the game for me. I don't like this part of the game. Even when I'm speedrunning, it's completely boring because you're just mashing on buttons. It's nothing but cutscenes for like 2 hours almost, even if you're speedrunning, because you can only mash so fast. But I think what they are going for that I think is kind of admirable is showing that after war, you need to actually govern. Like, life needs to go on after this large-scale adventure in a way that a lot of games, like, think in FF8, like, there are assassination attempts, there are globe-spanning wars, and you never get the sense that these countries exist outside of this linear storyline. Whereas 9 a lot of times likes to stop and say, hey, this is a country with a real government, with an actual leader who is when a leader, a change of monarch happens, like there is a slowdown. People need to get up to speed. There's process that's happening. The adventurers can't just be out adventuring after this large world-shaking event. And I think that it's an admirable attempt. Unfortunately, for gameplay purposes, it's boring as shit. Like, that's not what you necessarily want to play. But I think in terms of world building, it's a unique attempt. I don't see games almost ever attempt this at all. And maybe it's for good reason.
Yeah, there's a very good reason nobody ever attempts it. I mean, like, by that logic, you could say it's admirable for showing anything, basically. Like, isn't it weird you never see characters in Final Fantasy games, take showers, go to the bathroom? Why is it when they go to the inns, we don't get to watch them sleep? Oh, in this Final Fantasy game, we're going to watch the characters sleep. Isn't that a unique addition? Like, just because something's different isn't a reason to valorize it or even to claim it was good or worthwhile.
And by that logic, the best Star Wars film would be Star Wars Episode 1, because half of that film is debating global politics, because it's novel to debate global politics in a film. No, it's not. I had a different reaction in terms of what they were doing. I thought that it was more or less providing a sense of place to Alexandria, because your time in Alexandria wasn't that extensive in the first place. And the game is very quickly going to tear Alexandria down. And you, in order to have an emotional response to destruction in any way, shape, or form, you have to understand that that location is a real location with people and characters. I just wish it was more compelling. I understand kind of the intent, but I just feel like the execution was not where it should have been.
Yeah, and that's ultimately where I stand too. Like, I think it's the low point of the game writ large, and I think you could definitely trim. There are a couple of subplots. There's Zidane moping. There's Ruby getting her theater up and running. There's a love. God. There's the love note.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, the love note. Aiko tries to write a letter.
God damn it.
There's Aiko.
So bad.
Yeah, there's Aiko with the summoners kind of talking to Dr. Tot. There's Vivi kind of getting back into the swing of Alexandria, having not been there for a while. Amarant and Freya meet each other for the first time. And so they're trying to do a whole lot of these narrative beats and subplots. And, Steiner and Beatrix's romance starts here. But it's just so much narrative crammed into such a relatively small amount of time. And I think they just should have cut some of those. You didn't need the love letter.
Yeah. I think that's part of the reason why I dislike the love letter scene so much, is because it's for characters that I feel have already had plenty of time, and we have characters that have just been introduced to us a few hours ago, and they feel underdeveloped for much of the story. Amarant feels incredibly underdeveloped for much of the game, and it's a damn shame that the game has its quiet little moment and doesn't use it to build up his characters.
It actually does. So once you go to Treno...
I just didn't like what happens in Treno. I don't feel like that's good.
Did everyone see... So there's the Alexandria stuff, and then they go to Treno for a card tournament, and that's supposed to...
And that's complete bullshit.
The card tournament itself?
The card tournament is a complete waste of my goddamn time.
It is, but it gives you a rebirth ring, and so at least that accessory is really good.
If I'm going to a location... and the high action in that section is interacting with a minigame, you fucked up.
You
fucked up. You fucked
Billy,
up.
Please tell me you won on the first try. That's all I want to know. Yes, good.
Yes.
Glad to hear. You put in the work, and you got your reward. That is the only reward you will ever get in the entire game for playing it.
It wasn't hard. My deck's real good. I've got good cards.
I won on the first try.
Good.
Well, I feel worse.
Oh, no. Well,
Billy, that's what all those hours of trying to get those cards amounted to. You got a ring. I hope you're happy.
Oh, you did too and spent no time? Great.
I spent no time on that minigame and got the same reward. So
I had fun for a while, and now I'm just full of regret.
That's the story of so many of your gaming experiences. But
no.
Still, Dota.
No. I learned a valuable lesson.
Some games are not worth your time and attendance.
Some games teach you something really important about yourself, that you become a better person on the back end because you know to watch out for your demons. It just took me a year and 2,000 hours to figure out that I had a problem. And now
and
on
now
the other side.
I have this chip and it says that I'm clean. So
Yep.
So the story beat that we were talking about with Amarant, did you guys see it, Pete and Billy? Did you see the Amarant cutscene?
The bodyguard side story? Or he wasn't a bodyguard, he was like a palace
security guard for a noble's house, and Zidane got him fired.
Yeah, Zidane robbed the place and then uses stereotypes to finger Amarant and say, actually, he did. Look at that guy. He clearly did it. And then,
which doesn't really make no goddamn sense, because they very clearly saw Zidane steal the shit. So why would they automatically?
He basically says, "Look at this guy. Doesn't he look shady?"
What's the HR department doing in all this?
Yeah,
there was a hiring process.
I don't know.
Where are the background checks? How?
Treno's HR is not great. I don't know if you saw those streets, but there are a bunch of treasure chests there that are just empty because people already stole them. But he basically says, hey, look at that guy. Doesn't he look shady? And the guards immediately believe Zidane, the small monkey man, over...
Isn't it wonderful that our protagonist used racism to get out of a bind?
Nope, not great. Oh. Zidane's not... he has not grown in that flashback. He's not a great dude. But... That is Amarant's deal. Is basically he's hated Zidane ever since then, and wants to know why Zidane's stronger than him. But that's kind of
pretty much. Compelling backstory.
It's not a compelling backstory. I know you said compelling backstory, Pete, but I think you're being sarcastic.
Yeah, spot on, Gino.
Nailed it.
Zidane had more potions in the fight.
Yes, he had more potions, and he hit limit break or trance, and Amarant didn't. Nice
slip there, G-buddy.
Sorry.
You're the Final Fantasy expert, and you called it fucking limit break.
I misspoke. It's the same. It's basically the same system. But
you're right.
On Disc 3, I used Grand Lethal for the first time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Grand Lethal's dope.
I assume that's the damage cap, is all 9s?
Yep,
straight 999.
Yep.
Yeah, Grand Lethal...
In some of the games, it'll actually go over 999, but it'll still just display it that way.
Yeah. Grand Lethal with straight 9s, and then Solution 9 also does straight 9s 90% of the time, which is pretty good. But after Treno, after the stupid card tournament, it turns out that the card master is Sid, and then you go back to Alexandria because it's under attack.
We leave Alexandria while there's this crazy homicidal maniac riding a dragon around trying to take over the world. Great idea. Let's leave to play cards.
Yep, they leave to play cards, and wouldn't you know it, while they're gone...
A giant dragon is destroying everything. Surprise.
Yep, to be fair, they did not know that he could then summon Bahamut. That was a new one for them. That Kuja didn't just defeat Bahamut and mind control it. He could just then summon it himself. That's some messed up shit to learn.
Yeah, well.
So Bahamut comes, lays waste to much of Alexandria, and at that point, Aiko and Garnet assemble these 4 stones that Queen Bran was trying to assemble basically the entirety of Disc 1 and 2.
There's a fun moment between Beatrice and Steiner in the city streets when they're finding the Mistodons.
Yeah, that's an awesome sequence, I think.
That scene's okay. I wish... I still have the problems that I talked about in the previous podcast about Beatrice.
Yeah.
That's always kind of going to bug me, but it was a good scene, and it almost redeemed the waste that was the Love Note scene. Almost. because they clearly have feelings for each other, because this is a JRPG. So if there's no romance subplot, then that's not a real JRPG.
Well, I did enjoy the kind of fighting back to back and trying to clear the streets, and that's the second time you get to control Beatrice, and she's still super fun to play as, even though she has all
her
that
time is
story
short.
baggage. Yep.
Her time is short.
Did that do anything for you, Pete?
I always like Beatrix. I mean, anytime she shows up, I'm happy.
I'm happy as well. I think she's a really cool character.
Yeah, I don't think Steiner necessarily deserves her.
She's problematic.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Fine. Beatrice is problematic.
But they clear the streets. They try to do their nightly duty, and I enjoy the couple of times where Final Fantasy IX just goes like, "Hey, these people are knights. They do stuff different than everyone. They have a different code than everyone else, and they fight differently than everyone else." And they actually explicitly make the knights fight together. This is the second time they do it. They also do it the first time Beatrix shows up. Freya, Steiner, and Beatrice kind of hold the line as everyone else is escaping.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice echo. And then they summon...
Alexander?
Yeah, they summon Alexander, the giant, holy robot.
It's a robot? I thought it was just a living castle.
It's like a living castle mech.
It's the castle, and it's got legs, I think. This is not the first time. So is Alexander one of those summons that's kind of always in this franchise? Like, there's always going to be an Alexander summons?
Alexander is recurring. He's in a lot of them. He's in 7, he's in 8, he's in 9, and he's almost always imagined as this gigantic mech that has holy, like, it opens up missile pods and then shoots holy light out of it, which is a crazy design. I don't know how the fuck that works.
Okay. Some sort of angel Gundam?
Yes, basically. It's Neo Vatican City in Gundam.
It's a cool visual. The giant city that's protecting Alexandria from Bahamut and then shooting its laser beams at Bahamut. It's a very cool visual. I just wish that I hadn't gotten confused about what was happening or why things were happening the way they were. And the game kind of foreshadows like who one of the primary villains is by having Garland just pop out of nowhere and then not address who he is or what he plans on doing. Yeah. I feel it's a visually stunning scene. It's one of the more visually impressive scenes in the entire game. I just feel that in terms of narratively speaking, it's very muddled and slightly confusing.
It's definitely muddled in like the grand arc of who is Garland, what is going on. I think in the progressing Zidane and Garnet's story, I think it does good work. Because this is the moment that basically you were complaining for a while that Garnet's not learning from her mistakes. She's not changing. She's not adapting.
Okay, yeah, that complaint is no longer a big issue for me.
This is the payoff. Basically, she is naive for almost the entire game, and terrible things keep happening almost, if not as a direct result of her actions, at least she can perceive them as a direct result of her actions or inaction. And when Alexandria falls, she basically has a breakdown.
Yeah.
She loses the ability to speak. From that moment on, she, in combat, is unreliable. She will sometimes just fail to do whatever you ask her to do. And this is yet another moment where FF9 makes gameplay and mixes gameplay and story in a way that the series had not kind of up until this point.
Yeah.
And I thought that moment, even though it takes your best healer and makes her basically ineffectual, I thought that was one of the best cards that they played narratively to actually make sure that this moment means something for that character outside of cutscenes.
Small interjection real quick. I had one tiny problem with the visual cutscenes that played in parts of these like major story points.
Sure.
So sometimes they would reference things like Alexander or what other one showed up in that scene? Like the Invincible.
Okay, sure.
Oh yeah, that's
ship.
Is it the fact that they color coded the font?
No, it was like I had a really hard time knowing who was who sometimes.
Oh yeah, that's
in the
a
scenes?
problem I've always had with this series.
Because they would reference it in the regular gameplay and regular story, but then for the cutscene, I'd be like, "Oh, what the fuck am I looking at here? Is this
Sure.
Did a spaceship just show up?" And no one's like, "Oh, dude, that's the Invincible." Or like, "That's Alexander." They could have had like a little like fade in, like, "Hey kids, pause for a second. This right here is Bahamut." So you would like know what it looks like. But I just kind of had to infer based on like what it said after the fact, like, "Oh no, like so and so destroyed the city." Oh, I guess that's what I was looking at for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, and at least they had the decency of making Alexander protect Alexandria. So there's a the castle looks kind of like the summon, which in some of the later games and earlier games in the series you don't even get that. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's at least they're trying a little bit here, where they don't in FF13. It's unbearable sometimes with their proper noun usage.
Quick show of hands: how many of you fought the evil textbook in the library, Tantarian?
Okay, Billy, Pete, and ZombiePie are all raising their hands because this is an audio podcast.
They couldn't hear that, like me just waving at the microphone.
Okay, that boss battle is balls.
I think I actually beat it, but I lost that save file and I didn't go beat it again.
But even when you beat it, you would agree that that is not a fun boss battle.
I
don't think I had any fun. You have to hit the book until it gets to the exact page where the monster is in, and any of the damage preceding that doesn't count. And if you use a physical attack when the monster is there, it immediately goes back into book form. So you have to use magic.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would hit the book to show the monster, but I already had queued up a physical attack to move the pages forward, and so it would immediately go back to page 0.
I didn't have that problem because I had, like, once I figured out what was going on, you die a couple times, and then once you figure out what's going on, I would just be really careful with how I turn my pages, and I have some characters on defense. I had a lot of my characters have like auto potion up, so I just spent tons of money and stocked up on lots of things.
Not a fan of auto potion, by the way.
I'm fine with auto potion.
I am not a fan of auto potion at all.
Yeah, auto potion.
Like the fact that you can't assign auto potion to high potions after potions are basically worthless is garbage.
I'm fine with it. At the stage of the game, auto potion was fine.
Does auto potion use MP?
No. Just a reaction.
Okay, sure.
Just you take damage as a trigger, you pop a potion from your inventory.
Yeah, I don't like auto potion just because it eats potions too quickly for my.
I just had enough money to just blow all my money on potions because I was grinding.
We talked about that's your problem, not my problem.
Money didn't matter to me.
Money was occasionally a problem for me.
Was it Gil?
He stacks skill to the ceiling.
I never had a problem with Gil. Also, back in disc 1, like I made sure I got a really good score on the play, so I just started the game with like hella dollars.
And I got such a high score on the play that instead of getting dollars, I got a moonstone. So,
I haven't really done anything with my moonstones.
Do you at least get a kick out of the fact that Amrant can make it rain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For violence.
He encourages violence with money. Just money and violence. That's a guy I can get behind.
Weird character. But no, Tantarian is no joke. That boss battle is not fun. It's rather difficult, and getting all of the items from Tantarian is quite a bitch.
Yeah. I just waited until VP like limit broke, or trance, or climax ignition. I don't know.
Trance. But at least the running shoes are really good. But fun fact, just to mention, because you said I don't know what the heck moonstones do. Carbuncle, the summon that Aiko learns from a ruby, that summon will cast auto reflect on your whole party. However, if you have a moonstone equipped as her accessory, it casts vanish on the whole party, which makes you immune to physical attacks. If you have an emerald equipped, I believe it casts shell on the whole party. And then if you have, I think the third one's a diamond equipped, it'll cast Protect on the whole party. So that is a very specific interaction that you would never know about if you didn't have a guide.
Real quick interjection, because this is going to be something that I keep bringing up. Gino, you're well aware of this. I'm not that great at playing Final Fantasy IX. I've been making quite a few mistakes. I would say I'm bad at it. So here's the thing: if you have Reflect on your characters,
yep,
and you use a healing spell on your characters,
it reflects it.
It heals the enemies.
It heals the enemies. That's fucked. That's some bullshit.
It blocks that shit like Dikembe.
That's not okay. That's not okay. I'm not okay with that.
But you know what you can do, though? You can cast Reflect on your party, and then if your opponent has Reflect on them, you can bounce spells off your party at your opponent, and it negates their Reflect.
Like if they're magic immune or something, or have some weird defense?
In order to heal my characters if I cast Reflect or use Carbuncle.
Yeah, basically. You can cast Reflect on the enemy, and then it'll bounce back to your party.
That's a bunch of bullshit, because there are characters and bosses that are immune to Reflect.
Well, there's some bosses that cast Reflect on themselves, and so the answer is to cast Reflect on your own party, and then bounce spells off your party at them. Vivi eventually gets a passive ability called Reflect ×2, which causes his spells to do double damage if you bounce them off a party member.
I did that so many times. It's like, oh, I have Reflect on. The characters have been using physical attacks. It's time to pop a healing spell.
Nope.
Time to cast Curaga. And then it's like, oh god, what have I done?
I like it when I can teach my allies, or have them statted or equipped to absorb an element, and then it's more efficient to heal them with a damaging attack than it is to actually heal them.
That's always fun. Yep. There is nuance there.
Sometimes you cast Reflect on your party, except the person that can absorb lightning, and then you just cast lightning on the whole squad, and then just reflect. Oh, you healed a guy. So that's ways you break, or one of the many ways that you can break a Final Fantasy game.
Yep.
Did we talk about how I didn't know how you had summons in this game until Disc 3?
Yeah, you shouldn't have. Garnet had summons the whole time.
Yeah, I mean
that was one of the big story beats.
She does that.
I didn't know you could actually. I didn't know there was a difference between Eidolons and summons, and I didn't know what the diamonds and stuff did.
Eidolons summon. I mean, Eidolons are the creatures that you summon.
Yes.
Yes. So she has summons at the beginning of the game. The problem is her MP isn't high enough to ever cast them. Though if you get her MP high enough, she can cast them very early on in the game.
It's inefficient, I think. They're just not that. They're not that. They don't pack enough punch to blow her whole
cutscene
MP
is also
load.
kind of killer. Some of those cutscenes last quite a long time for those summons.
Sure.
When you first use.
But it's a story, again, gameplay kind of mirroring story. So that is the foreshadowing for Garnet getting her Eidolon stolen, and also her not being mature enough or strong enough to harness her powers.
Man, I really like the thing where it's like, yeah, she used to have a horn, then they cut it off. It's like, oh man.
Yeah.
That's beastly. That's messed up.
So after Alexandria gets destroyed, just basically leveled, all of the countries on the Mist Continent are destroyed, and you immediately go to Lindblum, right?
I went to Dolly real quickly and saw basically all the citizens are like, oh, we're screwed because the factory's gone, the farm's ruined, we're all dead. Everyone's dead. No one's going to be happy anymore. We can't feed our families. No one's going to college. We're all doomed.
Yeah, and if you had gone to Dolly mid-Disc 2 when the war was in full swing, they'd be like, yeah, we're doing it. We got the schedule running. We finally have money. This is great. And it comes
cool. Full circle, which it's cool that the game does that.
Yeah.
I'm not okay with how Garnet basically has the Dostoevsky's, you had an emotional trauma and now you're afflicted with some sort of mental or physical illness for the story. I don't like that at all.
Well, to be fair, her mother died. she was made queen of a country, and then the country was immediately attacked with basically weapons of mass destruction, and she wasn't able to do anything about it. Like, if it's not like it's a minor trauma, and it's not like it's one trauma, at least. Like, they earn it with her. She's seen a lot of shit.
Both narratively and psychologically, it would fit in with ideas of powerlessness.
Yeah.
But how it manifests in the game is the most typical storytelling way to manifest it, as she literally can't talk. She's selective mute now. That to me is kind of where the scene kind of breaks.
Yeah, I like the gameplay metaphor more than the story explanation. I like that she's literally second guessing herself.
Yes.
She will second guess all of her actions. The part where she's mute and can't concentrate, I don't like that as much.
And it's a real bummer because she's the best healer in the entire party, and there are times when you can't use Ico. So you don't have your full-fledged healers in the game for quite a long time. For entire swaths of the story, you lose your entire healers, and I think that's a dick move on the part of the game.
Auto potion.
You shut your mouth. You shut your goddamn mouth.
Auto potion. Good to go.
Well, at this point, you go to Lindblum. You find out that you need to find Kuja.
No. Right? We're talking about this horse shit where you have to pick up 3 potions to try and cure Sid of his illness, because the game spends an entire half hour on that, and we are definitely talking about that because one of my biggest problems with Disc 3 is there are really interesting moments and set pieces, but how the game bridges the gap between those set pieces I find to be entirely contrived and trite at best. Like, there's another collectathon down the road. There are weird mini games that you're afflicted with.
They're blessings. They're little blessings.
They're not. They're nothing like snowboarding down a hill like in Final Fantasy VII. But boy, howdy, are they not fun?
You get to help a kid get more active in the streets by racing him as Vivi. And then you get something for it. I don't really know what you do with it.
You get track star shoes or something. I forget.
You get like some kind of trophy or some shit. Yeah, athlete queen or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you try to get Sid fixed. So you run throughout Lindblum trying to find basically potions to combine to make a transmogrification potion that will make him a man again, because he can't figure out how the heck to build airships with his bug brain.
He has like a bum memory or something.
Yeah, he's an
Oglop.
In Oglop form.
His bug brain don't work good. The one cool thing with Lindblum, like that whole sequence where you're trying to find...
you see the 2 rat people and their family.
Yeah.
That's a nice moment.
Yeah, you see the rat people who you save in Burmecia, and they have kids, and they
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Call their kids over and say, "Hey, kids, this is Daddy's savior. Thank you so much for, helping us escape."
They sure have been busy because they got like 8 kids, and it's like, man.
Well, they are rat people.
You realize that your wife is not a clown car. She just can't keep putting this stuff out, right?
They are rat people. They have lots of kids.
Pack rat.
So I thought that sequence was cool, and then seeing some of Lindblum kind of rebuilding a little bit was interesting. It's not the full rebirth, but it's kind of on its way. Where Alexandria was the ascendant country a disc ago, now Lindblum is kind of on the come up, and Alexandria has been raised.
Mm-hmm.
So, running around asking people, "Have you seen this potion?" sucks. And once you get the potions, the payoff isn't great. Sid, from being an Oglop, is turned into a frog, which is pretty fitting. I did enjoy. Oh, by the way, you tried so hard, but he's still a fucking frog.
But see, that's when, like, the story should have just been like, oh, just like grab a maiden's kiss. Wait, do they even have that item in this game?
No, that's not in FF9. That's in
Oh.
7.
Oh wait, you can't
and
do
earlier
it.
games.
You can't do it. Makes sense. Oh, sorry. Sorry, but
He'll
Frog
get a
is
maiden's kiss.
my favorite status
You also
effect in
can't
all of
cast
Final
Toad
Fantasy.
in this game.
I know. Frog is my favorite status debuff in this game, or in the series. I should say.
He eventually gets a maiden's kiss, but it is not an item. It is an actual kiss. So you then get the Blue Narcissus, the ship.
Cool looking boat.
Cool looking boat, and you
I wish
go
that
to...
this would had been a cutscene of you chasing after. I wish that had been an actual cutscene with the boat.
That's later on, I think.
Oh, okay,
after.
sure, no problem.
Yeah, there's other boat stuff first.
Yeah, first you go to the Black Mage Village to try and get info, and you find it abandoned except for one Black Mage, the dude who hangs out at the cemetery.
Yep. And then the two guys raising the chocobo.
288.
Yes. Yep. And Kuja...
530.
Kuja ran through and promised everyone that he would extend their lives if they served him, and so almost the entire village followed him.
Which I just realized that's actually some great foreshadowing about what's about to happen to Kuja. That's hoisted by his own petard. That's pretty good. I just realized that. Good on the game on that. Oh, man. Ha.
Yeah, so he promises them that he will extend their lives. Obviously, it's a lie, but you then convince one of the Black Mages. Vivi convinces the head Black Mage to tell you where the heck they went, just by kind of convincing them that Kuja is going to lead them to ruin. And I know you don't want to betray them, but we need to stop him. He's doing terrible things. And so you go to his hideout, which is in the bottom of a sand pit, which is awesome.
I don't know how a wizard did it. A wizard did it. He put his
magic.
Yeah, sure. Let's just say.
Is that the maze? Is that like the maze level?
No.
No, that's the level where. So you're
in the prison chamber and then you have to break up your party. And then you have to go to Olivert. I fucked up. I fucked up real bad. So
you have to split your party, and he tells you. He tells you split up your party. This place you're going. The reason you have to go.
By the way, you can't use magic.
Yes, this place you can't use magic, which is why I can't go there. So split up your party. You probably don't want to take magic folk.
Yeah, guess who decided to take the original 4 cast members to Olivert?
Why?
Because that's the party I've been rocking with. They're really high leveled, and I didn't want to bring. I also, being who I am, I don't read the dialogue. I just take screen caps and then go back. So I sped through that dialogue. It's like, man, you're talking a lot, Kuja, more than normal. I hope that there's not any really important Legend of Zelda you ought to know this font that I skipped over. So I decided to have Zidane, Dagger, Vivi, and Steiner in my party when we went to Olivert. And I quickly realized
the party you want.
I quickly realized the mistake that I had made was catastrophic. When I tried to heal, there was no option to heal.
Yeah.
So Olivert was a real problem for me. I know that. I don't know. Maybe is it easy? Is it hard? I wouldn't know because I made a mistake. So I made a very tactical mistake.
Most of Olivert is not that bad because the main devastating enemy in that area is called an epitaph. It is this monster with a kind of a book on its chest.
Those are the ones where you can just apply soft onto them and then they disappear.
Yes, that is why they are not that bad. But if you
They're
don't
just
do
big
that,
stone monsters.
Did you see what their move does though, Billy? Like what they actually do?
Do they cast Petrify on you?
No, they open up like their chest, and then a mirror version of one of your characters comes out, like a mirror version of Zidane or Aiko, whoever it is. If you have that person in your party, the first move that cloned character will do is say, "I'm the real Zidane" or "I'm the real Aiko," and then kill that character in one hit instantly.
I was getting them confused with another enemy that I had seen before that were also like very, very large stone enemies that would
cast doom.
Yeah, they would doom your party. Not
those guys are real fucker.
Doom and slow petrification, basically the same thing.
Yeah, so those
over time, insta death.
That area is not bad, and it also has a ton of cool.
Well, it was certainly bad for me.
It's not that bad if you listen to what Kuja says. But I think that in that area, you get one of the cooler set pieces in Disc 3 with the you start
talking
slowly,
faces. It's very it's Geiger-esque is the location, especially with the talking faces, and when you start to go into the innards or inner sanctum of the location.
Yeah, you get a history of this other civilization, like a history of airships that doesn't have anything to do with Gaia. You get a history of this planet kind of rising to prominence and then falling. And then you see these giant moving faces that kind of tell you explicitly, there's this planet called Terra. We're not going to survive. And here's kind of a recounting of our history. Pete, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, just why parallel universes? I mean, why? I agree with you, Gino. I think it's an excellent set piece, but I think this is just emblematic of the chaos and nonsense that is Final Fantasy IX's story.
They went for the lowest of hanging fruit for their story.
Wait. Parallel universes is the lowest hanging fruit?
It's an easy way to do that. The fact that two of the characters have love subplots, finding their man as a subplot, and then two of the characters have essentially the same story. Vivi, okay.
Low-hanging fruit's not the term you want.
No. You can't have you can't try to do like an intense metaphorization of global warfare in the way we saw in Disc 2, and then come back around and say, but wait, parallel universes and soul transfer. You can't have it both ways.
That is the biggest problem I have with 9. That is the thing that has always bugged me about this game, is that when it is grounded on Gaia, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that the game is great. When it goes to the parallel universes and we need to deplete the souls of Gaia...
That's more than half of Disc 3!
But let me finish. What they do with Kuja, I think, is good.
All right, be more specific.
Character?
What part of what they're doing with Kuja is good? Is it the thong? Because I agree with you, the thong is strong.
Thong is pretty strong. When they do they invert his character, where he is kind of this soldier of war who's a weapons dealer, basically. He is creating these
grounded reality.
Golems.
He has a motivation, motivated by profit. I kind of like that.
Good.
Creating golems. Okay, then it's basically it's Lord of War. He's just trying to create war.
Yeah, sure. Got it. Like it.
Treats these golems like shit, treats other people like disposable nothings. Then, at midway through Disc 3, you find that there's this character, Garland, who is one...
We're already off the rails, but okay.
We're off the rails?
Yep. He's one puppet master up, who is basically directing Kuja. He is the man behind the man.
Right.
Where did that ship come from? Where did Garland come from?
Terra, another world.
You've lost me.
Yep, came from another world. But once you go to... There's one person above him. And Kuja thinks his goal is to basically become more powerful than the man who's on top of him.
Yes.
That's his goal.
Okay,
you thought his goal was just to spread chaos, but it's to move one step up the ladder.
Right.
And when he basically gets told, hey, I gave you this job and I told you were special, Garland's like, not. Actually, we'll get to this later, but I guess, do you want me to say it now or later?
Yeah, just go. We'll get there.
Get it. We need to hear your apologies.
Actually, you're not this. I told you were the special chosen one. Actually, you're not. You're disposable because you're a fucking lunatic, and I wouldn't trust you with shit. I trusted you to just crap things up until Zidane, your brother. You were right. This other person who I thought was stable and responsible could take over for you. And so you have this villain who this entire time is this
baby.
He's this Machiavellian tube baby.
He's a tube baby.
Who is railing against this
with a
person
soul.
Yes, he has a soul, and he is trying to rail against this person who is one step up the chain from him. And
oh my god.
He's told that, hey, you thought you were going to be this immortal super being, which all of these, almost all FF games have some boss who's going to be an immortal super being.
You sound like a crazy person.
Can I finish?
Yeah, sure. I'm just kidding.
Okay. The crux of a lot of these games is there is some character who thinks they are going to be they're going to attain some MacGuffin and then become Lord of the world, or they'll rule something. Sephiroth, he's going to destroy the planet and then absorb its energy and become some cosmic being. Fucking Final Fantasy VIII, Ultimecius is going to stop time and then rule everything.
His name is Ultimecius?
Her name. She's a sorceress from the future.
A sorcerer from the future that tries to kill the past. It's
whatever. Let's not even get started.
Let's not get into it. Kuja is trying to do that. He's trying to live out that plot line. And then it's basically told, actually, you're going to die a natural death long before your plans would ever have come to fruition. And it is at that moment where it hit me personally, because that was the moment that made me read this game as a game that is very interested in not only mortality, but in terminal illness more explicitly. As Vivi as a character who is kind of diagnosed halfway through the game as having a finite lifespan that is predetermined and there's kind of nothing he can do about it. But up until then, he was living an ordinary existence, thinking he had a long time to live. Kuja, who all of his plans were predicated on him living to see the results, and basically being told, hey, you thought you were immortal, you're not fucking immortal. In fact, you're so mortal, you're going to die before you even leave this planet, is basically what Garland says at the end of Disc 3. You're going to die before any of your plans come to fruition. And basically their reaction to that moment of learning that their lives are not just finite, but incredibly finite, I think are really, for me personally, impactful. And you, ZP, have not read the article I wrote for Giant Bomb.
Yep.
That is what I write about. That is what I wrote about, was how this game deals with the concept of terminal illness and how I read it through that lens.
I have no problem with the use of terminal illness. I find the use of terminal illness and the fragility of life with Vivi especially compelling, and provides the story with some of the best moments in the story. I don't think that Final Fantasy IX needed its hard pivot from a grounded in reality fantasy story setting to its science fiction mumbo jumbo.
Nope.
In order to do that.
I don't think it does either. I think it's poor storytelling that they did that. I think that is fulfilling the expectation that these games have to go to this existential level. It is playing into that trope, and I think it is to the game's detriment. I think that, this is one of your favorite lines in the Land of the Blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Country, but yes.
In the Country of the Blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Yep.
These games always go this way.
I don't know if I like it or not.
Almost to a fault, almost every game in this series goes to 11 at some point. And when 9 goes to 11, it at least doesn't leave the grounded stuff completely behind, which is something that I appreciate. It keeps the thread going in a way that I appreciate. And
doesn't part of you appreciate when 8 and 7 go to 11? It's so goddamn crazy that it's almost beautiful. And
yes, but 8 and 7 I enjoy in the way I enjoy watching an explosion in a movie. I enjoy 9 as a narrative experience even after it's gone off the rails because it's kept its grounding some. It like Kuja's story continues to interest me in a way that Sephiroth's never did, and a way that Ultimecia's never did.
I don't know. I think Kuja kind of becomes damaged when it's revealed what Terra is and Kuja's progeny.
he does become damaged very vividly.
No, I mean, as a character, my ability to enjoy Kuja as a character becomes damaged.
I want to chime in for a second and say that I think this is one of the parts that, like, this development seems a little bit different to me than other characters. I will agree that you can connect differently than in other games. Like, I haven't played Final Fantasy VIII, so I don't know about, like, whatever Galacticus character that was.
We don't need to talk about 8 and 7.
Whatever, but in other games, like I played 7 and 10 and some of the other major games in the series, I sort of took Kuja from my mind as being like a pretty like decadent villain to hate, but now I sympathized with them as being like, oh shit, man, Kuja got played hard too. Oh, now I kind of feel bad for Kuja.
I will give the game credit for building sympathy for the devil in probably the most compelling manner possible. One of the biggest problems that I have with 7 and 8 is the fact that, well, 7 really has no characters that have a redemption arc, and then 8 does, and it's the worst. There's no reason for you to actually believe that Cypher should be redeemed as a character.
Doesn't
it just
Red 13
happened.
have a redemption arc?
Red 13 is always a member of your party, and the only time you really think he's a villain is because he's tossed into a tube with Eris.
Yeah.
But I do believe that I developed sympathy for Kuja. I just feel that it was in service of this science fiction skyhook rather than a crane.
Yeah, you didn't need it. You didn't need to have another world be present. You didn't need that to even have his race exist. You didn't need it to be another world. It could have been, on one of these continents that you find, there's another civilization of people who care, who are doing some of this stuff. It doesn't need to be another dimension. But that would mean that they would do the same
thing twice in the one game, and they already did that with Ico's people, so they had to do something different. So what's left? I don't know, fucking alternate dimension.
Now, I mean, it seems like they wanted to do some sort of grander level of storytelling, but I think it's a little
and when
flat.
Final Fantasy swings, they swing hard.
Yes. Like, when they go existential, they're like, what if souls were this giant stream that's in your planet, and you could suck them out like the jelly in a jelly donut, and then you could put other souls into the planet? Like, it's a lot. But let's get back to Oliver. We'll continue to talk about it. Or, Pete, did you...
Yeah, I have one more point to make before we sort of move back to the story. Is even setting aside the sort of sci-fi outlandishness, let's say, of this plot twist, I still think an interesting theoretical conceit, and I think it is an interesting theoretical conceit that you're raising, Gino, sort of looking at Vivi's and Kuja's responses to, let's say, terminal illness in contraposition to each other. I think even an interesting theoretical conceit doesn't make up for a lackluster game. Just because you can produce an interesting reading of Final Fantasy IX doesn't salvage Final Fantasy IX.
I think that's fair. It's just, I guess this is just kind of a different expectation of medium. That 9, you not enjoying it. I know there are people who do enjoy it for playing it and do enjoy the story.
I'm not saying the game's without value.
I'm not going to just say that, like, intrinsically you're right that it's a bad game.
Yeah,
I would push back on that angle, but the expectation that a game having a solid story and that not being enough to outdo game, like maybe a lackluster gameplay or lulling moments.
Well, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt with you, Gino, but I'm saying it's not even a solid story. I'm saying there's an interesting reading of the story that you're producing, but the story itself is not good.
So this is something that I've been thinking about since I've heard your guys' responses to the game. What do you, and this is a larger just meta question, but what do you do with narratives that kind of slowly unfurl and have large twists, and judging them kind of in snapshots in the way that we're doing versus judging them as a completed work at the end? Because if you judged Moby Dick I'm going to use that as not that this is the Moby Dick of games, but if you judged Moby Dick by like the first 7 chapters, and we
if you
were
like
have a
half
podcast,
of its chapters, it's a whaling textbook. It's miserable.
It's a whaling textbook.
Yeah.
It's miserable. It's not going anywhere. Why the fuck would anyone read this? Half the way through, it's been a whaling textbook. How could they have done that to us? I guess there's some interesting stuff happening, and then when you get to the end, it's like, oh, this was all a gigantic metaphor for, any number of different concepts you could throw onto it, and it's one of the greatest novels ever written. And so, I'm not saying that this game does that, but it's hard to discuss something that is trying to do so much and have so many narrative threads when they haven't sewn them all together yet. And it's hard to have this discussion. Like, if at the end of FF9 you still feel like they didn't pull the threads together and these narratives didn't go anywhere and you felt it was meandering and it wasn't worth it, that's certainly fine. I just have a hard time, and I've had it for the last 3 podcasts, like talking about this game and explaining why I love it so much, when like one of the things that I love so much is the way that the last cutscene ties it all together. Like, what do you do when the answer is, well, in the last scene, all of those callbacks get called back again and have a great payoff.
All right.
Like,
okay.
Moby Dick wouldn't be necessarily a great novel if at the end they never found the whale.
All right, Gino, I still have my doubts, but I've been suitably chastised. I will reopen my mind to this story.
I'll echo Pete's point, because I feel like my favorite part to, what is it? Fitzgerald's
Great Gatsby.
Great Gatsby is the last page. I think that's the best part of the entire book, is the actual last page, how the main protagonist summarizes basically his life and the duality of man in maybe 2 paragraphs.
Yes, and
you could say the same thing about Clockwork Orange, which is really unfortunate because they cut out the last chapter in the American version.
Mm-hmm. But my favorite thing in 9 is how it ends, and that is
okay. Great.
That's actually, it's probably my second favorite, because I like everything going on in the Black Mage Village. Just like that whole sequence, I think is great. But it's hard to talk about, and like in the larger question that you asked, Pete, like, does a interpretation make a work good just because there is a good reading that can come from it? Like, no, but I think on an individual level, if you're able to take some large meaning, it might not make the work good, but it definitely makes it meaningful to that person on a level that I think is worthwhile to discuss, if not necessarily communicable.
No, I think the interpretation is always valid, but that's just sort of the distinction I was trying to draw between the worth of an interpretation, and I think this is a good one you're making, versus the worth of the work itself. And, if we take, I'm going to get highfalutin for a second here, if we take deconstructionism to its, like, if we take it in all its glory, there's no way to separate the two. But I don't think any of us here want to be Derridian deconstructionists, do we?
Oh, philosophy, humor.
And also, I would say that my interpretation, like that specific interpretation, I don't think is super universal. However, similar interpretations of this game and that dealing with mortality and dealing with these kind of existential threats and existential crises, that is pretty universal. Like, most people get that reading from the work. Okay. So we're back in Olivert. You find out about this other storyline that's happening. There's this other world, Terra.
Wait, so is it literally another planet in a different dimension or part of space, or?
That is something that I never understood. I don't know if it's another planet that is physically nearby.
So
like on another dimension.
When Terra gets destroyed, did we destroy like a mirror planet from a far off universe, or? Yeah, I just never understood that.
That's what's not clear, because it seems like the 2 moons, are supposed to symbolize that these 2 worlds are coming together. But I don't know if that means that,
I think if that was articulated more, I would have had more buy-in. Like, I could actually physically see a planet in the distance, like in the sky. It's like, oh, wait, that's what it was. That's what we were they're trying to transpose this planet or merge this planet into Gaia and create this super planet that everyone like. That would have been better, but I think that the game is very vague, and I don't know if it was deliberately so or they just never thought that it would be that big of an issue of where Terra is, where Gaia is. Why is it that one planet is scientific and the other planet is magical?
Yeah, and it's got all of these... It's one of these problems where when these games get super highfalutin, and I have this problem with just anime in general, anime storytelling in general, is when they decide to make that hard turn, which so many of these stories do, you're just dealing with these concepts that are hard to articulate and are needlessly complex. Like in 8, why the hell is time getting... What does time compression mean? In 7, what does it mean that Genova is a planet...
Eating monster?
Eating monster. What does that mean? What does absorbing the life force of the planet mean physically? What, is he going to transform? Is the planet going to turn into a big body? Is it going to be like a ship? What the hell does this even mean? And 9 falls prey to that as well, like with the Ifa tree being a soul filter or something. Like, all that stuff starts getting really... Weird.
It gets weird quick. And I think that's the game's and the game's story's weakest point, is when it tries to purport itself of functioning on a higher plane of existence than what it probably should have.
Yeah. But you get through Olivert, you defeat Ark, you get the Gullug Stone, and then you cut back to the other party who is trapped in
this scene sucks.
These 007, these James Bond villain-esque cages on top of lava, which is great.
Everything that happens in the Desert Palace is bad. It made me feel bad. I wish it didn't exist.
So this is a fun moment just for speedrunners, I would say.
You play the frog and you hit the X button real quick until the...
Not that. Ugh. That sucks. That sucks for everyone. It's because you split your party, kind of the physical people are supposed to go to Olivert and the magic people are supposed to stay in the Desert Palace.
Oh,
the Desert Palace.
Really.
Yep, that's what you're supposed to do. The Desert Palace is actually the one moment... I'm sorry. It's the one moment in the game where Quina shines. It's
really?
Quina's time to shine in this speedrun. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because it turns out every enemy except for the final boss of the Desert Palace has a level that is a multiple of 5, which means that level 5 death, one hit kills every enemy in the Desert Palace.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Big Quina.
How did I not know this?
It's great. It's like the one moment that Quina is indispensable. Quina makes it so that you can one-hit kill every enemy in one spell, and you get full experience. That's actually how you level up a bunch of characters.
Man.
It's Quina's time to shine.
I haven't gotten to this part of the game yet, and now my faith is entirely restored in Final Fantasy IX.
Yes, if you have level 5 death.
I had no idea.
Got the grind.
Quina is death.
The grinding is going to be so good.
Quina is death.
I have goosebumps. I'm ready. My body.
You know what? That's fucking great. I didn't have level 5 death because I haven't been using Quina at all, because I just find Quina to be busy work that I'm not willing to subject myself to. But I think it's amazing that they actually did that. I also really, I don't like the Desert Palace, but I like how interacting with the environment makes the pending boss battle that you will eventually have weaker. So there's an actual motivation, or there's an intrinsic reward for you actually discovering every nook and cranny in the environment. I thought that was a great idea. I wish the rest of the game had that at least implemented some way, shape, or form, to where actually having that deep desire to interact with every piece and part of the environment will make your life easier down the road, rather than you just get a bunch of bullshit that you don't know will or don't know how will impact the game.
Yeah, and I think that just the layout of the Desert Palace, it's a really iconic location with all this kind of white, like ivory or marble designs with kind of this cathedral stained glass everywhere.
Sure.
And then these blood red bloodstone or pink bloodstones that you find. It's a really unique location full of weird puzzles, but
it is difficult to discern what is part of the foreground and background. It's a problem that I have here, and another location, which we will talk about in a little bit. I like the visuals. I really appreciated how interacting with the environment resulted something intrinsically in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that this wasn't a puzzle level.
Yep. So you beat the giant thing at the end of the
giant
palace,
tombstone, whatever it is,
and then Kuja basically
is done with your bullshit.
He's a dick. He kidnaps Aiko, he steals the Gulug Stone, and then he leaves to the Lost Continent, which is a icy continent up north. And
I wish that chase sequence was a cutscene where you're out on the boat and it's like, we gotta find him. It's like, he's getting away. He's got an airship and we're on a boat. I wish that was a cutscene. That would have been great.
Chase him down. I love that you chase him down.
I wish that was a cutscene. Man, that would have been great if you actually had this visual of you trying to chase down this airship. It would have been great.
I thought it was pretty cool that they went on the world map and then showed the ship catch up to an airship, like your little boat catch it and chase it down. That chase down block was pretty intense. But you go to Estogaza, which is
I wish there was more to do there, because it's actually interesting to have there's these monks that are this religious order. What if this is what all this prayer was in the name of? I wish that there was more to do in Estogaza.
Yeah, it is yet another chapel.
It's another chapel.
It's an entire location that is only a religious location, and in this game, Burmecia has a temple. Gizmaluk's Grotto has basically a ceremonial section. It's like a wedding spot. There's a temple in Lindblum. There's a temple in Slyra. I don't know that there is one. Oh no, there's a chapel in Alexandria.
I wish all of these religious locations were in the name of creating a religion or a sense of faith with this world, because otherwise it's just a cool location to go through. It's visually interesting, and then it's just pushed to the side and pretend it's not there.
Yeah, and Estogaza, if you talk to some of the priests and stuff, they'll explain that there's this path of souls is what they're talking about, and that's the Shimmering Isles. The area you eventually use to go to Terra. There's some weird phenomena there that's like Northern Lightsy, and they worship it. And other than that, you don't get that much explanation. There's like a religion based around this Northern Lightsy phenomena.
Yeah.
Around the Shimmering Isles. So it's very, like a lot of the religious stuff in this game, it's very sparse.
It's sparse, but there's a lot of religious iconography, and I feel, again, it's kind of interesting, but there's more potential to it that the game doesn't actually utilize.
Exploit. So you go into Estogaza, you pass through there, and you then end up in Mount Gulug, which is a callback to Final Fantasy I. There's a level called Mount Gulug. And the music in Mount Gulug is a remix of the music from Final Fantasy I.
Which is why I didn't like the music then, because I feel like... I mentioned this in the previous entry. I think that there's a lot of music that works well, but I find the music of Final Fantasy IX to be too upbeat in certain locations, and this is one of the other prime offenders, to where I think the music needs to be much more downbeat, dour, and darker.
Yeah, and the reason why it's not is because it's literally a remix of
and
very upbeat
too
song.
Upbeat. I think, visually, it's great to see this dilapidated town. It kind of reminded me of that one location in Dark Souls, where there's all the mud people and you get poisoned a lot and cursed. Ugh, that level
it's
sucked.
kind of a Blight Town sort of
It's a
place.
Blight Town, yeah. This looks like Blight Town. And here's this upbeat track that's all techno-y, and it's like, what the fuck is this? What?
Now,
it's because it's a callback.
Can I ask, and this might be a bit of an out-of-place question, but
Sure.
This conversation made me think about it. I've actually played most of this game on mute, And
you're missing out on some real interesting music.
Yeah, like how much am I actually missing by not hearing the game?
Like a lot. It's got good music.
Like I can listen to the soundtrack and I know what Final Fantasy music is like, but I mean, am I missing a huge dimension of the game, like storytelling wise?
I wouldn't. I think Gino and I are of two opinions. I personally think that the soundtrack is a little too electronic and too techno-y for a game that, for a majority of the story, is a medieval fantasy story. And I don't
to be
like.
Fair, your complaint is based on like 2 or 3 locations. It is the Black Mage Village. It is here, and then I don't know what other locations you really have a problem with.
I have some of the Terra stuff, the Terra locations. I get that it's techno-y, but again, it's upbeat rather than downbeat.
I just
and the Garganru is terrible. Oh man, the music in the Garganru is bad.
Yeah,
I just usually play while I'm also doing something else.
Sure, so if you listen to a podcast, man, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just
that's how I play 90% of my video games. Is listen to a podcast.
Is of a high quality. You don't need to listen to it, but it's at least.
I like the music in 8 and 7 way much more than this.
That's fair.
Yeah,
but I'm not missing any like music plot point.
No, not.
And then
not
also,
generally speaking,
we haven't talked about it. I think Kuja's music sounds like "We Will Rock You" from Queen, and I have been told.
It does.
I've been told by multiple people, yeah, you're right. And it's like, great. I thought I was crazy in thinking that Kuja's theme sounds exactly like Queen's "We Will Rock You."
It does. It's great.
Dun, dun, dun,
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a great theme. It's a great villainous theme.
And Garland, I know most of you guys probably don't know this, but Garland's theme sounds exactly like Koyaanisqatsi.
I don't know what that is.
It's a Philip Glass soundtrack.
Okay.
You either love Philip Glass or you think that he's a music murderer.
Okay.
He's murdered music. What did you guys think of the Red Dragons? Because I thought they were terrible.
They suck a lot.
They suck a lot, and the fact that you have to fight like 8.
You don't. You only have to fight 2. If you explore that place all the way, if you explore that place completely, you have to fight like 8.
I did.
Mainline critical path, you fight 2. So, sorry.
Did I need to level up more, or are those dragons always bad?
Oh, man. Miserable.
You can kill them pretty quickly with Blizzaga if you have it.
Okay.
Those dragons are actually one of the harder fights for the speed run. But
they're fun.
They're
real strong. They hit hard, and they've got that weird attack that basically was able to level my entire party in one attack.
Yeah, they've got wind damage, which if you're not prepared for, can really hurt you bad.
And I was not prepared for.
Gotta be prepared for wind damage.
You got to be prepared for wind damage. Got to build that building real tough, real hard. One thing.
They also cut you up. They'll cut you up.
One thing, and this is kind of related to Arc. Gino, I just want to say this. I think I'm done with bosses in Final Fantasy games having attacks that basically bring my health down to 1 HP. I'm fucking done with this.
No, you're not.
I know I'm not.
They're not. It's not done with you.
Done, but I am done with the idea that this boss can basically bring me down automatically to 1 HP.
Well,
it's a pain.
And
yes, you are correct. Bad. There is a Quina attack that basically takes advantage of that and changes it's a role reversal if you use that attack, but I don't like Quina.
No, the thing is, like, if you're playing very precisely, that's actually a nice attack because lowering you to a low HP means it can't kill you.
Yeah. And
you'll generally make yourself immune to the attacks that can kill you. So at least that's a round where they're not doing something that's capable of really screwing you up.
Do they have Lucky 7 in this game, Gino?
No. Oh, actually...
they have Lucky 7, but they don't have, like, Jackpot.
So, with Zidane, he's got that move called...
Yeah, Lucky 7, but that one's, like, not what I'm talking about.
The way it works is if you have I think double sevens in the last digit of your HP, you can deal 7,777 damage.
Huh. I remember doing that when I had triple sevens on one of my characters, and I was like, that's a funny thing. I didn't really think much of it.
In some other Final Fantasy games, there's like a particular strategy to make that trigger.
Yeah, and so you can do it
a good
in 9 if you get double sevens in his ones digit. I think it's double sevens. It might just be 7 in the ones digit, but if you do it, then occasionally when you use that ability, it just does 7,777 damage, which is huge, like early on in the game. So
for the first 3 discs, that's really big damage.
Yeah, but it's not a huge thing. It's not like you deliberately go out of your way to do that to speedrun this game. So you get to the bottom of Mount Gullug, and Aiko, they try to rob her of her Eidolons as well, but they cannot do it.
They're stupid jesters. When do they die?
They die there.
Do they?
They try to rob her of her Eidolons, and then
she summons.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Mog.
Lino. She summons
totally
Lino.
Does that. You're right. That's my fault.
When do they die? Right there.
Right then. Good. Not soon enough, but at least they're dead.
Yeah, Mog, it turns out the little Moogle that she keeps in her dress was actually an Eidolon in disguise that was like watching over her as a guardian, and he dies for her sins.
Wait, does he die or he becomes just an Eidolon?
He becomes an Eidolon, but he stops being Mog, so he's no longer with her physically.
Okay, sure. Got it. Multi-Gemini kind of looks cool. I think Multi-Gemini is a cool-looking boss. I didn't like it how it casts virus on everyone. I beat the boss, and then I got absolutely jack shit from the boss battle. And that's how I learned what virus did.
Yeah.
That's a real fucker of a status effect.
It is. That's a real fucker of a status effect. That boss is gross.
Yeah.
They meld.
Two
and
gestures.
That's real fucked up. It looks like if anyone who's a Magic the Gathering player, Eldritch Moon, one of the mechanics is meld. It's fusing 2 cards together into a horrible Eldritch Abomination. And Brizella looks a lot like the gestures fused together in a way that I was not prepared for. I was like, oh shit, that callbacks. But
this is slightly off topic. You guys are Magic the Gathering players, right? What was that weird card game that the Magic the Gathering people created that was kind of like a Halloween theme, and it had like a horror theme, and it was like weird characters and cards with like jack-o'-lanterns stabbing the shit out of people, and it was kind of like...
What?
There was like this weird the people who made Magic the Gathering, and I keep trying to call it Hexen, but it was a card game that was deliberately horror, and it reminded me of this, and it completely tanked because the art style was considered too grotesque.
No, I have not heard of this. So
I forget it.
Sorry.
Oh man, but no, yeah, I like the look of it. I like that boss battle right up until they cast virus on me, and I got absolutely no experience in points from beating the boss.
Yeah. So you defeat that boss, and then there's another sequence that I really enjoy. Vivi says, basically, he has to reconcile with all of these black mages who were tricked by Kuja. And Zidane is kind of, trying to focus on... They find Hilda, Sid's wife, and Vivi is kind of in this position where his people are hopeless. They know that they're going to die soon for many of them. And this person who said that he was going to be able to save them can't. And Vivi has this line that always sticks with me. All I can do is just sit with them. And it's a very simple line, but it always resonated a lot with me as someone who has unfortunately spent way too much time just sitting with people, waiting for them to either get better or not. I thought that was a pretty resonant line that for so long that Zidane is kind of giving him advice on what to say and what to do and how to think and how to behave, that there's this moment where Zidane has no advice for him, and he kind of comes up with his own answer for what to do for these people who he cares about and can't help, and who kind of haven't come to this state of realization that he has. And I think that it's a pretty subtle moment in a game, in a disc that has gotten dramatically unsubtle.
Yeah, there's another real good scene. If you bring Vivi into Olivert, which I did.
Oh, I didn't. I've never done that.
There's a real quick moment to where when you go onto the elevator, one of the black mages just breaks character and is like, well, aren't you going to criticize me? Aren't you going to give me shit for it? And he's like, and Vivi just turns to him and is like, nah, because if I were you, I probably would have done the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, he says that.
That's awesome.
It's a great scene. I love that scene. He's like, you know what? If I were you, I probably would have done the same thing.
So I've heard, flashback to before I regretfully agreed to join this crazy train. Gino had always sung praises of Vivi's character development, and barring all other miserable experiences that I've had with this Final Fantasy shit show, I am now on the Vivi bandwagon for probably one of the best developed characters in any Final Fantasy game.
One of the best developed characters. One of the best characters in a video game, period. I would say there's a caveat, and it's a double-edged sword. I feel that Vivi, in some regards, is so well developed, it highlights how superficial some of the other members of your party are. And so much time is spent on Vivi that everyone else feels weaker as a result.
I feel like close seconds are like Freya and Garnet.
Nope.
I think I agree with Billy.
Who would you put?
Freya's whole thing is...
the problem I have with Freya is I need to find my man, and he has amnesia.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It is her going back to her home, and everyone's fucking dead, and she left.
That part is great.
She left to find her man, and you know what? When she was doing that, her people got massacred, and then she has to deal with that shit, the fact that she wasn't there to defend them at their moment of weakness, and then he comes back and doesn't fucking remember she even existed. It's not just that she can't find her man or her man's dead and she's sad. She finds him and he doesn't even know who she is. Which is, I think, there's a difference there between her just wistfully longing for him and then kind of having to deal with a world in which the person who you've dedicated your life to doesn't know who you are. There's subtlety. There's
I think
beyond
the first
fact that she
half
has a
of
romance.
Freya's story arc is great. I think when Sir Fratley is introduced, I was basically like, fuck.
Yeah, and I think you throw a lot of things in the "this is a romance plot" bucket, and once it goes in the bucket, you are not willing to look in the bucket again. And
you know what? You are 100% correct.
He had to just call it a bucket.
I'll take it. He's totally right. I find that romance subplots in video game stories and stories in general are very rarely done right, because the relationships in media are usually so contrived for the sake of hypercharging emotions to such a degree that it feels like they have to spoon feed it to me. And I feel that's the case for much of the romances I've seen in video games, books, and movies.
Slightly pushing back against ZP here, I would agree when you say that like romance subplots are played out, but I am always looking for relationship subplots, and I put those two things on different like playing fields, because it's pretty easy to throw a romance subplot, and we talked about this in a way earlier podcast, like podcast number 3.
Our third podcast.
Yeah, like podcast number 3, that I have a beef with games that just default to the romance subplot, and so I can see your criticism there. But I think of a couple of games that I played just in my entire history where there's a non-romantic but really important relationship that develops over the course of a game, and I try to look for those. And you're right, that didn't happen necessarily with the Freya case, but I think about like the relationship that maybe Vivi and Zidane build. How
that's a great relationship. You're 100%.
In so many parts of the game, Vivi is entirely dependent upon Zidane's almost like guidance. Shoot from the hip guidance.
And that later does a great job of making later scenes in the game more impactful. I would agree with that.
I think that to a lesser extent, the Garnet Steiner relationship is
Didn't like it.
Is what?
I was not a fan of that.
Like it,
I don't like Steiner.
Go ahead, Billy.
I also don't like Steiner as a
apologize.
character. Like I don't like Steiner as a character very much. I think he's pretty one-dimensional, but I think this is one of the
Thank
points.
you.
I think this is one of the points that like Garnet gets her first kickoff in the direction of her own development, and it wouldn't happen if it weren't for some of the scenarios that develop because of Steiner's like overzealous, super white knight like mindset. So I think that maybe Steiner was a necessary casualty for Garnet's development, who I like.
Can we put the like hair cutting as a symbol of like strong, independent new womanhood to bed as a trope too? Is that something we can just do away with for the rest of our lives?
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. That was like, if you're going to hit me with a metaphor, please don't bludgeon me over the head with a brick.
Yeah, and this is kind of the rising action after kind of the darkness that happens in Disc 2 and kind of leading up to here. Once you find Hilda, you get her back to Lindblum, and she restores Sid. Sid becomes, a regular human being again. They get... Oh, and it's great that she's just like, you're a skirt chaser. I love that she just calls him out in the plainest way possible.
And she talks about Kuja as if he's a gentleman, and it's like, yes, he's a gentleman who also wants to destroy both universes in the world. Thank you, Hilda.
She talks about him that he's a narcissistic bore. Like, he's got some plans, but he's also a hopeless narcissist.
But on the list of Cujo's faults, those would be pretty far down. Like, legitimate faults, but other things to comment on first.
Yeah, and I don't know... She's been captive this whole time. I don't know that she's seen what he's done so much as heard about what he's done.
Sure, but, I'll accept that.
If you're going to be locked in a room with this dude who's telling you these grand plans, I bet that he wasn't, like
by the way,
detailed.
Here's trying to kill your Oglops husband.
Yes, or like, yeah, and I killed so many folks. Oh, my goodness. But she returned Sid to humandom. You get Lindblum kind of rebuilding. You see Alexandria rebuilding.
And you know what? I think all of that is great. I think watching them rebuild the cities is great because it so often we watch video games destroy entire cities and there's no but wait, what happened after? And the fact that the game took the time to depict like the destruction and the people living there actually trying to rebuild their lives, I give full praise to the game for doing that.
Yeah, and this is where the bandit, like the Tantalus people, show up again. They are actually physically boots on the ground trying to rebuild these two cities, and I thought that was pretty cool to have these characters keep playing out in this way and keep being impactful. And then it kind of crescendos with Sid back on top of his powers, building this new airship out of the Blue Narcissus, the boat that you were driving around.
Tantalus.
Yeah, that's when you get your first airship.
Is the stage for another one of those micro relationships between Blanc and what's his name? His bro.
Blanc?
Who?
Blanc and Marcus?
Whoever gets petrified.
Yeah, Blanc.
Yeah.
Blanc
micro
and Marcus,
relationship
Blanc and Zidane.
That means something, and a person is motivated to act upon, but it's not necessarily romantic. That's my bro.
It's my bro,
Basically.
bro.
I gotta go back to the Stone Forest. Save my bro. He saved me.
This is the truest kind of love there is, man. Bro love.
Yeah. Bro love. Guy roll. I agree. I like their relationship right up until you start to remember how the game very clearly depicts Baku as this child abuser.
Yeah, he's not a good man.
He's not a good man. And so why are these people banding around Baku if he's known for being this abusive asshole?
I think that the story of Zidane is mainly getting over this
nostalgia
entirely male. Yeah, this almost entirely male troop that he runs with that womanizes, that is overtly misogynist, that is violent, uses violence as a kind of hierarchy, and just kind of getting over that shit is so much of his story.
I like Tantalus's role because they started off as being kind of like a tutorial level, but then they continued to matter in ways that weren't forced later in the game.
Yeah, and I like that even for those problematic elements that I enumerated, they are never depicted as intrinsically evil or bad in the way that a one-dimensional interpretation of their character traits could be. They have these problematic elements running through them. They're criminals. They say some rough stuff.
Are you going to defend them stealing all that shit earlier?
I mean, there's a difference between being a bandit and being like a murderer.
Has it occurred to anyone else that Tantalus is a terrible name for a thieving troupe?
I mean, not as bad as like the
it's not a terrible name
geopolitical terrorist group.
It's a terrible
Avalanche.
name for a group of thieves.
Yeah, but as a group.
Well, do you guys know the myth of Tantalus?
Yeah.
No.
So Tantalus was constantly reaching for food he could never reach and like trying to get drink of water that he could never get to. The whole point of Tantalus is like that's where you get the word tantalizing from.
Yeah, he's being punished in Tartarus.
Things you can never reach.
Yeah.
So basically, they're really shitty.
And also,
thieves.
We mentioned it earlier, but that's also where we get the term low-hanging fruit, because the fruit is very low-hanging and he can't reach it because he's constantly slowly drowning in this water, and whenever he wants to grab the fruit, he can't reach it.
It's a really shitty name for a group of thieves.
Anyway, I don't want to criminalize Tantalus.
Let's call it Sisyphus or Pelops.
For
Niobe.
Or why not
Prometheus being marginalized,
the greatest thief of all time, really,
and forced to assume life of bandithood, or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, they are not forced. They're just kind of thieves.
I'm just trying to look out for my bros.
They can be thieves and still be like it. If there's any lesson of those characters, it's that even though they are thieves and even though they are kind of less than great in some of their character traits, they still manage to have a net good effect on the world. So once you get the airship, then you go to Ipsen's castle.
All right.
Which I think is one of the coolest dungeons in the game in terms of just design.
Yes, it's design.
Yeah.
It's fine. Moving around in Ipsen's castle is the worst.
It's hard.
The worst.
So the design, if you haven't seen it, it's a castle on top of a castle, and the bottom half of it, it's a complete
It's MC Escher.
inversion.
It's an MC Escher level. It's just as bad as the Temple of the Ancients MC Escher level 2.
Well, the bottom half of the level is an upside-down castle, and then once you get to the upper half of the castle, everything's right side up again.
Can we talk about the worst part of this level is that, one, the random encounters here are tough because there are those flying bat monsters that have doom.
Did you figure out the gimmick of Ipsen's castle?
No. Well, the gimmick is that you can't use physical attacks because your physical attacks are real low, so you have to use magic, and so you run out of MP, and so you keep using your Esther.
Nope,
everything's backwards. So you need lower level people.
You need lower level weapons. Actually, your dagger, the original weapon that you start the game with, is the strongest weapon in the game in Ipsen's castle.
Yeah.
The stronger your weapon, the weaker it is in Ipsen's castle.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Nope.
No. That's why you find daggers and rackets and broadswords and weak shit in Ipsen's castle. It's because in that castle, they are the strongest weapons.
Everything's backwards.
Fuck. Because I was always under the impression you had to use magic attacks only.
Well, magic attacks are always strong in Ipsen. Are the same. They are unaffected.
I thought the whole point of the castle was that you can't use physical attacks.
No. The part of the castle is that if you give someone the dagger and the items that you're finding in these chests in this environment, and the fact that the mod shop in Ipsen's castle only sells low-level weapons, they hint it, but it's not explicit. But everything's upside down.
So wait, Gino, you know this because you played this game 800 times. Pete, how the hell did you know this? Did you look it up on a guide?
No, I mean...
Just figure it out.
Yeah, because all my attacks were doing shitty damage. And then once you find enough daggers in chests, I don't know, it's just why would they give me all this nonsense?
I just viewed it as a big fuck you to the audience that all the treasure there is shitty.
Nope, all the treasure there is shitty because in Ipsen's castle, they assumed that you got rid of it. And so they give it back to you.
Okay, I'll admit maybe I slopped through a level. I got through.
Yep.
But still, trying to figure out where you're supposed to go, what parts of the environment are interactable, what pipes you need to go up. Is that a ladder or is that just a weird texture on the wall? Oh my god. That is the worst part of Ipsen's castle. There's the one, once you go to like the second level and there's the chandelier with the chains, and you have to figure out that this weird thing on the wall is actually a ladder.
Yeah, it can be hard to discern.
It took me 15 minutes to figure out that was a ladder because I just thought it was a weird texture on the wall. This is some Final Fantasy ass environmental puzzle stuff. Like, this is stuff I haven't seen since 8.
I believe if you hit the select button in 9, it will highlight all of the interactable items in a room. It will put little arrows over them.
Oh.
So you might want to use that.
I'm not sure if that's true.
I think it does. It does it in 8. I think it does it in 9 as well. There's a toggle that will put a little arrow over Zidon's head, and then it'll also put an arrow over interactable things.
I don't know about that.
You can test it. I know it does it in 8.
I might load it up real quick.
It does it in 7, too.
Yeah, but I think it does it in 9 as well. And so we didn't really mention this with Ipsen's Castle, but at the beginning of Ipsen's Castle, Amarant just leaves your party and is an asshole and says, what if I can do this before you? I'm not going to hang out with your party anymore. And then once you get to Taharka, the boss of Ipsen's Castle, he's like, I found it before you. Fuck you guys. I'm not on your team anymore. And this is his character moment. It's kind of shitty. You defeat Taharka. You get all these mirrors that kind of show off these different places on Gaia that have these shrines that you're going to need to take down all at once, which is kind of a cool conceit. And then as you leave, Amarant, he didn't leave. You left.
He's in there. He's
still in
got to
there.
go save him.
He was
You
here
gotta
the
go
whole
save
time?
him.
And
He's got an injury, then he doesn't have an injury.
Yeah. And then Zidane goes in by himself like an idiot. Take 2 people with you. Jesus. He goes back in, you save him, and then he learns about the power of teamwork.
Yep.
Yeah. See, Gino, like, what if...
I feel
how
like you're...
superficial Amarant is in comparison to Vivi.
Yeah, I mean, Amarant is the last character you get. You get him at the end of Disc 2. He is the most superficial character from a character development perspective in the entire game.
To the story.
He's completely meaningless to the story other than to be kind of disgruntled and to physically pick people up with both of his hands, which is pretty cool. I love when he does that. He's just like, kids, come here, grab one with one hand, one with the other, and then jump places.
Yeah.
But from a gameplay perspective, he's probably the most interesting character, so I kind of forgive him. Just like Quina. Kind of a story inconsequential character, but gameplay super cool.
Well, at least Amarant doesn't ruin entire scenes that, like, Quina does.
No, and Amarant, he, like I said at the beginning of when we talked about Amarant, he kind of is a coalescence of the monk character class, the ninja character class, and the samurai character class. And like all those classes would imply, he's kind of this roguish character who's also kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
So this leads me to the weird existential crisis that Pete and Billy don't know about. But Gino, you were there right about after Ipsen's Castle, and you're retrieving the mirrors. That's when I had a weird situation to where I kind of started to love this game. Because... And Gino, you remember this weird conversation that we had on Steam and on Giant Bomb.
Yeah. You said you thought this was one of the greatest games ever made at this point. Or like this disc was like one of the best.
So I know Pete and Billy, you guys are kind of in your own category. I'm stuck in a weird place because I think I only like 50% of this game. I love 50% of this game. But I hate, and Gino, you kind of have gotten this, I really don't like the other 50% of this game.
Yes.
And I don't know what to do.
Love all of it.
I don't know how to feel about this game because once you leave Ipsen's castle, once you go to the shrines, and once the main pivot happens, I mean, we've already talked about how the pivot has problem. It's problematic to the story. But it's much like, and I've mentioned this before, it's much like a Christopher Nolan film. Once you accept the spectacle for what it is.
Yeah, once you accept that this is happening.
Once you accept the spectacle and accept it superficially for what it is, the literal worth of what is happening in the scenes, it's a magical experience. I think that the stuff with Zidane, I have hated Zidane for a vast majority of the game, but all of his moments post Ipsen's castle are great. He as a character matures. Garnet has matured. Steiner is no longer an irredeemable bastard. He becomes
a pretty upstanding guy.
An upstanding guy who's like now respectable. And like he has a real good line of dialogue with Zidane where it's like, hey man, how about you help us out? Because I still got to figure out if you're right for Garnet. And like I watched that line of I literally stayed on that line of dialogue with like my jaw to the ground because it's like, this is a great line of dialogue.
He learned.
You're actually acting like a human being. This character has changed. Because the big problem that I had with 7 and 8 was how the characters either did not change at all. It was a huge problem with 8. Or if they did change, as they did in 7, it happened for the stupidest, most Byzantine reasons possible. So I'm stuck still trying to, and we still have the 4th disc, and I'm super excited at what you've been saying, Gino. But I'm stuck with this video game, this goddamn video game, this Final Fantasy video game, where I love everything that's about to happen. Like, I honestly think that the next couple of set pieces are great. I like them. I like them quite a bit. And they are some of the most impactful, enjoyable, emotionally gripping scenes I've seen in a video game. Okay. But, man, I hate, like, the first half of this. Why couldn't we just get it? Okay, so, why couldn't this game...
Why couldn't this have that line with Steiner hit you the way it did if he wasn't so fucking dense for so long. You couldn't have Garnet make these big sweeping changes if you didn't see how naive she was in the first place. You couldn't have Zidane grow if he wasn't such a dick at first. And this is the thing.
It's like they're pilling the characters for 70% of the game so as that when they finally do change to become enjoyable, it's like, oh, you're not an asshole anymore.
Yeah, and I think they do a decent job of it. So
they rely on Vivi to keep you going for the first half of the game, which is the weirdest thing when you stop looking back at it. It's like Vivi has his moments, and they're really good. And then I kind of started to look back at it, and it's like, did they just have Vivi be the best character in the first part of the game so that they could get away?
The best character the whole time, always, forever.
But they have so much Vivi stuff in the beginning. Is like that just there to keep me?
No, it's because he's the main character. It's because he's the main character.
I still disagree with you believing that Vivi is the main character of the story.
He's the main character. We'll have this discussion at the end, but you get to Ipsen's castle, you defeat Taharka, you get these mirrors, and your team has to split up into 4 teams of 2, and you take down these places each individually, which it's great. They pair people up kind of along either, VV with Steiner, they have a team-up attack, it makes sense, they go together. Garnet and Eco, it would make sense that Garnet would go.
Yes, let's send both of the white mages in the same party. That's a great idea. What are they going to do? Cast Kuraga on the boss?
Well, they'll summon giant hell beasts, and that'll probably get it done. But you put them together because they have to have some girl talk. You put the 2 roguish characters who are kind of
like the dynamic between Amarant and Freya. I think they are. I like them. I like how Freya's no nonsense, wants to get things done, and then Amarant's just sitting in the background. It's like, you're dumb. You shouldn't care about other people. Blah.
but they're workmanlike. They're just like, we're here to fuck shit up and get money.
Oh, we forgot to talk about it. I like the interaction with Amarant and Freya in Alexandria in the beginning of Disc 3. That's a real good moment where it's like, I'll beat the shit out of you. I'll beat the shit out of you too. Come at me, bro.
Yep. And then you end up with the leftovers. Zidane and Quina.
That line of dialogue's so good. He's like, man, I got left with the leftovers. And it's like, okay. It's like, you realize I just insulted you. Well, in my race, leftovers are considered amazing. Thank you for calling me leftovers.
Yeah, food, leftover food. That's awesome.
Despite the fact that Quina has this, like, tropey, cliche, bad speech type deal, I actually found almost every line of Quina's dialogue to be enjoyable.
I disagree, and the only reason why I disagree is that the tone of Quina can sometimes be a weird juxtaposition with some of the more emotionally gripping scenes. Like everything in Clyra, where we're watching this civilization come down and deteriorate, and Quina's still talking about where's the munchies, trying to get her munchies on.
All right, I'll give you that. That it
She
can
is
be
a
weird.
space alien that has no bearing on what else is going on around them.
Socially incompetent, and
Then I'll take it back a little bit. I think actually Quina wins against Steiner for like being so extra on their character model.
Okay, I guess I can see what you're saying. I just don't think the
Like Quina
story
is
needs
always so Quina, and I can respect that a little bit. Like
Quina
Steiner
don't
is
change.
always
that's
hella
literally
Steiner.
That's literally the biggest problem I have with Quina is the fact that Quina is a pure comic relief character, and we already have these partial comic relief characters, and I think that gets the comic relief done.
Yeah,
But Quina eats
I can
fools.
see it, but I still liked Quina's.
Billy,
I liked Quina's flavor.
did you... Oh, wait, you haven't gotten this far. Did either of you, Pete or ZP, did you eat the Earth Guardian?
No, I don't think I got a chance to.
What?
Yeah, you can eat him.
You can eat him?
Yeah.
Eat the Earth Guardian?
What do
you
Quina
get?
get an ability, or
You get Earthquake.
No, I
Oh.
think
No, Earthquake's real good.
Yeah, Quina eats him up, which is great. I love eating the Earth
sure.
Guardian.
look, man,
Earthquake's actually a good spell.
It is.
yeah, sure. I really like the design of the boss. The Earth Guardian looks great.
Yeah, and all the different
Dia
the
de los
cutscenes
Muertos. Oh man, all the cutscenes, like
of the
it almost
other
highlights
fights.
how they don't need the ATE system, and if they just have cutscenes, that gets the job done.
Well, this is a sequence where literally all four things are happening simultaneously. It's a
Could
little
you say the
different.
same thing about the ATE system?
Not always.
Sure.
They use it for flashbacks. They use it for flash forwards. They use
Then
it
just
for
have
inconsequential stuff. Like you don't want an AT. You don't want a cutscene that's like, "Hey, Cinna, turn some water into some coffee," and to have that be forced on you. You want to be able to opt in on that. So you defeat these guardians, and you open up the path to Terra. You fly to the Shimmering Islands, and there's the point of no return. Billy, FYI, that's the point of no return.
Yeah, Billy, don't do
what?
what I did. Okay, so when you get the special ship and they talk about going to the Shimmering Isles or the Shimmering Islands, that is the point of no return. You will not be able to complete certain side quests beyond that point.
I don't care that much.
I'm just telling you, just in case.
Thank you for
care.
the information.
Maybe you will.
I just know that at this point, I feel like I just can't get the FF9 experience that
Is there any way we could convince you to just do this mainline story stuff?
No.
And then maybe you can go-
I
Grind
have
less.
just been doing the mainline story stuff. I've been not doing any side quests that I haven't found that were probably like easy to do. Like racing that Hippo K was like it. That took
That's
me,
a
like,
side
10
quest. You didn't need to do that. That you just get a card and some other nonsense that's really not that great.
Sure, but like I had something cool happen and it didn't take that long.
Let's just focus on the story. Let's focus on on chugging through.
Just get
We're
chugging
so
through.
close. So, you go to the Shimmering Isles. That takes you to Terra. You go to Terra. You stop being on Gaia. You stop being on the planet you've been on. You go to Zidane's homeworld, and you finally find his home. This brings full circle, one of his main storylines that he's been seeking his homeland his entire life, and he's finally found it. And it is this weird metallic
blue, because blue is the future. That's what every Final Fantasy game seems to think, is blue is the future. That's the case in 8. That's the case in 7.
But it's metallic and also weirdly grotesque also.
I thought it was like a weird mix of organic and inorganic, because there are trees and the buildings kind of look like plants and mushrooms.
Yeah, and there's like, instead of ladders, there's spider web looking.
Yeah, so it's this mixture of this marriage between organic and inorganic. And I actually liked the look. I just didn't like how trying to find stuff in the environment was kind of a pain in the ass, as is usually the case, as is par for the course.
You find Zidon's, like, the town brand ball that is full of genomes, because it turns out Zidon is not a human, he is a genome, which are this race of timeless and soulless beings that are basically designed to be vessels for the souls of this long-deceased civilization to inhabit. Terra is basically 100% inhospitable, and then as soon as, because it is 100% inhospitable, the denizens of Terra, the original people who lived there, created this race of beings that Zidon is one of, to basically survive until they can find a world that is habitable. And when they find that world or create that world, the genomes will just be the bodies for the new people.
Yeah, you're correct. I think that shit is terrible.
Yep. You're not going to get an argument from me. I don't think it's super necessary. It is interesting to see them kind of repurposing the black mages. Is kind of an inversion where black mages are supposed to be basically souls plus magic equals these golems that have no knowledge but a lot of personality. And then the genomes are the opposite. They are these soulless, eternal vessels that will last forever but they have nothing but facts and no emotions. So I liked them as this funhouse mirror version of black mages. But other than that,
I like what they end up doing with Zidon. I don't know how I feel about the fact that the game essentially recycles the same story arc for 2 characters.
Well, yeah, and I like it. I like that Zidon kind of starts questioning his existence in the way that Vivi did, because it's an inversion of their roles. All of a sudden, Vivi starts out as this completely naive character who has no idea what's going on or how to behave in the world, and Zidon is kind of this older brother figure who ushers him through the early parts of the game until this moment where Zidon kind of has his moments of doubt, and Vivi is the one who has a good sense of what matters and what to do. So I thought that
I feel like the game could play that up way more to where Vivi is now actually mentoring Zidon.
He does that a couple of times.
He does that as part of a concerted effort between all members of the party, but it would have been really great if all of the times where Zidon's trying to socialize with Vivi, ranging from talking to him about how he needs to keep himself together to pissing over a ledge together.
Yeah.
I think that they needed maybe one scene that was kind of like that, but Vivi was the leader of that scene. And then I think I would maybe buy into the idea that Vivi is the main character.
And who knows, maybe they do that. So you get these sequences. Zidon eventually meets Garland, who is kind of the maker of all the genomes. He meets another genome, a female genome, who is another kind of ensouled, his sister.
He calls his little sister, but they're all basically clones, so they're all related to each other. So how they are able to create a society later with no genetic bottleneck is totally up to them to decide on. Is everyone committing incest if they want to create their own civilization or city? I'm not going to ask. I'm just going to close my eyes and hope that
they are uninterested in answering that question. But you find
Garland's got a great theme song, by the way.
He does.
Oh man, when you go to Pandemonium, That is great. That music is great.
And Pandemonium with its like weird fiddle heads all over the place and these gigantic like horn finger structures all over the place. Pandemonium's a weird fucked up location.
I like the music there. You know what the music in Pandemonium reminded me of? Final Fantasy VIII, Norg's music. What was it called? Heresy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all Final Fantasy games need at least one track that's 90% organ.
Yes. Good call.
90% organ. Just dun, dun, dun. Like, give me that.
So this is where you find out Kuja is Zidane's pseudo-brother.
Pseudo-brother.
You find out that the way he looks is largely an attempt to differentiate himself from the soulless genomes that he's grew up with. So that is why he looks the way he does.
Why he wears a thong.
Yeah, basically. He wants to look as different as possible.
So so is he tucking his tail up his ass, or how's he hiding that?
I think
that's a thin fucking thong. Where's it fucking going? It's a long tail. Is he just shoving it up his asshole? Like, I don't know.
I think he's got a like capey thing.
Is the cape thing got it like weaved around his waist? Is he got? Is this kind of like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective? Like, what's going on here, man?
He's hiding.
Where's that tail
going? That's all we know. He's hiding it, and he's basically been acting out and trying to move beyond his station for a long time, and that is why Garland created Zidane, and that is why Garland decided to basically put a expiration date on Kuja. And so
did he purposely put the just kind of something he purposely gave from the very beginning Kuja an expiration date, correct?
Yes.
And why?
Because he
knew that Don was going to take over.
He said, like, Kuja was violent. He was good for that role, but he could not have a role in whatever society was to come after because he's a lunatic.
So prior to this meeting, is Kuja still trying to accomplish that mission of impressing Garland or meeting the mission objective that Garland gave him by creating more chaos and violence? Or is he just doing his own thing when he's the weapons merchant?
He's doing both. His goal is to overpower Garland, and his idea was to use the Eidolons that, Alexander and Bahamut, like to trap those, use those weapons as tools to defeat Garland, because he needs some higher power. He can't beat him one-on-one. So he is kind of going along with Garland's mission. He also is he's a murderous dude to begin with. So he is trying to lay low, play out his plan, and it just happens to align with what Garland wants, and then turn on him at the last second. But before he can turn on him, Garland pulls the rug out from under him and says, "You're going to die. Like, you're going to die before you can ever achieve any of your goals. Also, I knew what you were up to the whole time." Which is what Garland tells Zidane. He blinks him off, basically. Zidane rejects him and says, "No, I belong on my homeland, which is Gaia." And then you have this moment of doubt, which is, I think, one of the better moments in the game.
Oh man, the scene where Zidane is trying to walk away from his party, and he walks with a limp to show that he truly does need the assistance of his party. And you have what I can only describe to be the greatest boss rush I've ever... the most thematic boss rush. The greatest use of a boss rush in a video game I've ever seen. You have to fight these 3 bosses, and you start off trying to fight the first boss by yourself, and then Freya and Amarant come in to save your ass, and it's like, do you really think you can do this by yourself? You didn't let us fight by ourselves. We're not going to let you fight by yourself. And then you keep walking. It's like, just leave me alone. That scene's great. I love that scene.
Quina and Steiner are fighting someone, and Zidane joins them as later on in the fight. And then
and they crack jokes, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, you're a little late here, but welcome to the party." And I said, there's that line of dialogue where Steiner's like, "I still got to measure up to see if you're right for the princess," and he does it with this sense of joy and passion, and hey, man, we've been through a lot of shit. I know that I didn't treat you with the respect, but heart to heart, we're like brothers now. Like,
and
that hit
me. The music is awesome.
The music is great. The scene is great. I love it.
It's got a ripping guitar
solo. It's like the magic and medium of storytelling is all together now. It's actually coming together. The characters have matured. They've been through some drama. They've been through strife. They've had their moments together. And there's a real understanding that the reason why these characters want to help Zidane is because Zidane truly has helped them. Zidane, as superficially as it may have been, taught Amrant the importance of teamwork. He's definitely helped Vivi come to terms with his own mortality as well as his personhood. He's allowed Garnet to learn from her mistakes and develop leadership skills. He's done so much for the party, and so it thematically and narratively makes sense that they would try to come to his rescue and snap him out of this low, dark point in his life.
Yeah, and
it's great, and I'm so glad that this is here because it was never there in Final Fantasy VIII. It was the biggest problem with 8. It kind of was there in 7, but that game was the limitations of the time, and I think that in a lot of ways this is like the perfection, whereas Final Fantasy VII started something, this is the mastering of the concept.
Okay. And then the sequence ends with him... Zidane at like 1 HP, and then Garnet shows up, heals them to full health, and then they take on the last boss. Pete, did this sequence work for you?
Yeah, I think overall this was sort of one of the stronger points of the game in terms of overall narrative and storytelling. If we're thinking about sort of tropes, though, and this is just a personal peccadillo, so in the same way you guys are sort of sick of the romance subplot, I'm getting a little sick of the team subplot. If you know what I mean. That like, oh, the team comes together, the team's everything. This isn't my team, this is my family. And I'm just, it was an excellent execution of it, but I'm bored with it.
That's fair.
Yeah. That's fair. But that's also like a major point of every single Final Fantasy game ever is the idea.
I mean, in like JRPGs and animes and everything, it's always huge.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the fact that you point out that it's in animes and media, it could just be an important part of Japanese culture and storytelling. Because when you look at Japanese myth and mythology, the idea that you are a part of a bigger picture or a bigger society, and you need to know your role and fulfill that role in society, is a major part of Japanese storytelling culture.
It's a legitimate story to be told. Like I said, I think this is well executed. I think this is a good example. I'm just personally a little sick of it.
And that's fair. And so you go through this sequence. Zidane kind of regains himself after the experience. And the song is called Not Alone, which is I pitch perfect. You escape Pandemonium, and then you at the end...
There's this weird bullshit elevator and blue light bulb sequence.
Yeah, that puzzle sucks. But then you end up fighting Kuja. You fight the Silver Dragon. Then you fight Garland.
Garland.
Then you fight Kuja. Yeah. Then you fight Kuja in another boss rush. And at the end of that boss rush, before you fight Kuja kind of shows up and kills Garland. And then after fighting Kuja, he kind of knocks your party out in a Beatrix sort of way. He casts a spell and knocks you guys out. Oh, no, you defeat him first. And then
you defeat him first, right? And then he trances into this red, furry-looking monster.
Yeah, he trances and then he knocks you out like Beatrix does. And then afterwards there's a cutscene, and Garland tells him, he pulls the rug out and says, "You were always meant to die. You're not going to achieve the goals you set. I might have died, but you died long ago. Like, you were destined to die long ago. All of your plans are going to fail. Tough, basically. And Zidane's going to be the person who ushers things forward. And then Kuja loses it and destroys Terra. He destroys the entire planet.
Yep.
Basically. He goes nuts. He blows it all up. And
sort of vindicating Garland's decision, really, but neither here nor there.
Yeah, he vindicates the decision, but this moment is the one that makes Kuja as a character resonate with me so much, is when he's dealt the hand that you're going to die. You're going to die young. You're going to die without attaining the goals you set for your life. Because of how they raised the stakes on this story and raised the stakes on his power, they created a character who, when told that they are going to die before their goals can be met, actually has the ability to say, no, fuck you. I'm not going out the way you wanted me to.
I'm 100% with you. I think that's part of the reason why I think Kuja is more open to the idea of, as a character and as the audience, you're more open to the idea that there's redeeming. You could possibly still redeem Kuja because what he's angry about is something I think we could all relate to, at least intrinsically or personally. The idea that you now know that your time is up and you have these grand schemes and machinations in terms of what you think you're truly capable of doing, and when you feel like you're not going to be able to do that, that's something that would scare any person. Now, of course, because this is a JRPG, it scares Kuja to the point where he goes into a fit of rage. It's touching that in terms of the metaphor. He's stark scarlet red. But I think it highlights how, later it does create the sense that maybe Kuja is possibly redeemable because what he's become obsessed about, which is life, is something that it's very much believable. It's not about, in terms of Sephiroth, the idea of I need to honor my mother by cutting off her head and then summoning a giant meteor to crash into the planet. Or Ultimecia, which is using time to go back in time in order to kill these kids that eventually will kill me anyways, but then I'm going to create this weird paradox where we're just stuck. Just time. The time. You got to go back in time and go kill the evil witch lady. You go kill her. Like, this is, at least we finally, God damn it, we finally have a villain with a motivation that is clear, relatable, and believable.
And his motivation is, if I don't get to live and see what I want to have happen, then no one does. It's a petty, it's nihilistic, it's small, but it is something that, having seen too many people not get any choice, getting to see a character who is very empowered make the wrong one is at least cathartic, to be able to see a character be able to make the wrong choice when so often you don't get a choice at all. And so that is kind of what plays out. He destroys his home world, and when you go back to Gaia, you find it this mist-covered world, and something's gone wrong. And that's where you guys have left off, right?
Yep.
So that's where we're going to leave off. ZP, quick predictions, and then we're going to sign off.
Okay, 5 predictions. First prediction, I think that... I was going to say a Deus Ex Machina, but I don't know exactly what the Deus Ex Machina is going to be. I think we have one more... Okay, I'll say this. We have one more Get the Magical MacGuffin quest to do. There's going to be a magical MacGuffin we ought to get. Okay? I've actually seen you complete this game, so this is going to be tough.
Oh, then don't bother.
No. I do think that there's going to be a magical MacGuffin that we need to get. I think that there's going to be a scene to where right before we fight Kuja, Garnet and Zidane actually say, I love you, so as that we don't have this Skulder and Molly bullshit to where they get close, but they don't actually do it. I think that we're going to have one more moment where the characters just go back home. I think we're going to have kind of like a Final Fantasy VII situation where we basically all go back to our respective home places and spend some time with family and friends. And then we come back and coalesce, and then straight into the story. Those are the 3 I got.
Okay, that's fair.
Right before we sign off, there's a bit of housekeeping. Disc 4 is not that long. So, Gino, what were the important side quests that you actually wanted us to do and complete for this podcast?
So I'm going to say, ZP, you need to do this. Pete, you do not need to do this one.
Oh, man.
The Chocobo side quest.
Okay, do all of them?
Yeah, you need to do all of them, ZP.
Do I need to do any side quests, Gino?
Billy, you would probably like the Chocobo side quest, so you can do it if you want to. But
I don't know.
Mognet? Do you want us to do Mognet?
You don't have to do Mognet.
Okay.
You can if you want to.
So hot and cold.
I've been catching all the frogs.
You should all go to Dolly, whether you completed the coffee side quest or not. You should all go to Dolly. You should go to Deguero if you haven't been there.
Okay.
If you've collected all the Stelazio, turn them in.
Okay.
There's a Stelazio on the Invincible. That's the last one.
Okay.
And there's one in Deguero if you haven't been there. And then don't fight Ozma unless you're a lunatic. So ZP, maybe
I want to do it at least once. Can I just do it once?
Yeah, you'll lose. And then, are there any other side quests that are worth doing at this point? I think that's all of them. I think that's all the ones that I would definitely say do. Try to complete the Stelazio side quest. Like all of you, I think if you've been doing that as the game's gone on, it's pretty simple. You just like go to Treno and turn them in, and then you get.
I think I've missed some. Are there any that you can't go back and find?
No, you can go back and get all of them.
All of them.
There's no point of no return for that, and they're all pretty easy to find if you want to go back for them too. So. I think that covers it just about. Oh, you should also go to Q's or Quan's dwelling with Garnet, Quina, and Vivi. They get very different interpretations of Quan's dwelling depending on who you bring there. So that's
somehow I think there's no Excalibur 2 in our lives right now.
Not yours, no. But then just finish the game, and we'll come together. Pete, since you actually have seen everything that ZP has seen, how are you feeling with the game right now?
I think my concerns are still there. I'm not crazy about it so far, but like I said earlier, I think you made a solid point that I've made some claims that maybe I wasn't in a position to claim until I've seen the conclusion. So we'll come around on 4 and we'll reevaluate things, see how they tie up.
Yeah, and this is one where I guess when we are done with the game, I'll raise this question. How do you interpret a story when you're experiencing it for the first time versus in subsequent readings? Mm-hmm. Because all of a sudden you have total recall of the story forward and back versus slowly assembling your perspective. And I think that greatly changes how you experience at work. And I think that this is a game that really extra is impactful with stuff like ATEs and all these different fleshed out storylines. But we'll return to that. Billy, stay sane. Don't grind that much.
This game has taken years off my life.
No, it hasn't.
Try to finish the story.
On one hand, I'm happy that I'm a part of this because I like being on the podcast. I respect this game more that it is my friend Gino's favorite game than it being a good game by itself. Because I feel like I can't get the Billy experience. And I don't want to beat that dead horse too much, but I feel like I really am unable to truly actualize who I am as a player and get the kind of experience that I would get out of it, because right now I'm just trying to blitz through the story so I can catch up with you guys. If I had to make any like sweeping generalizations about my thoughts right now, is I think that I've fallen in love with some of these characters. I think the story's gone to some weird places. I look forward to their attempts at tying everything up. I'm sure it's probably going to be fine. And my voice gets shakier and shakier.
Yeah, and when we finish this game, I'll have something to say about the article I wrote on Giant Bomb, because there's something about this game that is not. It is kind of incidental to it as a piece of media that I kind of want to say, but I won't say it until we're done. So, thank you, Billy.
Thanks everybody for listening. I am happy to have caught up enough that I can participate now, and I look forward to wrapping this thing up.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you come in next time when we conclude our Final Fantasy IX journey.
And thank you, ZP.
No problem. Happy to be here. Well, I have to be here anyways. I'm stuck in this Sisyphean torment for 14 freaking games.
And they keep making
soon to
more.
be 15. Oh boy.
Well, till next time, audience. Thank you. Remember, you can get in touch with the show at deeplistenspod, deeplistens.libsyn.com, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Send us some feedback if you feel like it, or if you don't, whatever. Till next time, peace!